Okay, good morning again, everybody, and sorry for a little confusion there. So this whole series, you may remember that quite a long time ago, it was during the pandemic that we started doing. I started doing the Big Book workshop on Zoom, and and then we went from that to wandering through the Big Book, which was really taking a much slower go. I think there are some 60 plus videos on that website, wttbb.com, of us wandering through the Big Book and paying more attention to some of the stuff that's in the study guide than we can do during the workshop. And then just a couple of years now, we switched to starting to talk about the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius and their relation to the Big Book. So the whole premise of this thing is that step 11 says, be quick to see where religious people are right, make use of what they have to offer. And I can tell you, for me, it is absolutely inspirational, motivational, whatever, to read these ancient words um, written by people who had a relationship with God, had interaction with God, and are not afraid to talk about it. In our area, we used to have a big book conference on a weekend at a Tanglewood sort of uh, state park, and and a man spoke there that came from Denver, Colorado. His name was Bob Olson, and he was sponsored by a guy named Don Pritz, who is responsible for so many things, the fellowships of the Spirit and the way of reading that we talk about, where every statement in the Big Book is the truth of the people that wrote the book. And the question is this true for me? And if my answer is no, it's not true for me, the next question is, do I want it to be true for me? Do I want their truth to be my truth? And then the next question is, if I answer yeah, next question is, well, am I willing to do the work they said they did to get to that truth, which is basically improve my relationship with God from whatever level it's on. And if my answer to that is no, I want what they have, but I don't want to do the work. This is not easy work for any of us. Then the question is, am I willing to pray for willingness? And the prayer for willingness is such an important component of everything that we do. And part of that is what we're going to be talking about today. So Ignatius writes these spiritual exercises, which are really the use of the imagination to put yourself in a scene and see what happens. And he also developed these concepts of the Jesuits call the examine, which is what I think our step 10 is, where I'm pausing, I'm looking at what's going on in my life. And in our case, we use the 10-step protocol when I'm experiencing selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. When, not if. When I'm experiencing these things, the 10-step protocol is I pray at once for removal. I share with somebody. I make amends if called for, and I turn my mind to service. And the way we turn our mind to service is by trying to entertain the question that it says on page 85 of step 10, God, how can I best serve thee? And I've claimed for a while, if you canvassed your local AA meeting as people are leaving, and you said, how many times today so far? If you ask God, hey, God, how can I best serve thee? They would look at you like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? How? Well, that's what step 10 is. Step 10 says these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the human will. What do you think about that? And it's, again, look, I just don't drink no matter what. That's, I just make sure I don't drink, and that's it. So anyway, back to this guy. He comes to this conference, and toward the end of it, it's like a big book workshop. Toward the end of it, he said that in his considered opinion, this guy had been in AA 30 something years, done the steps every year, sponsored by this guy, Don Pritz. He was going to go out with Joe and Charlie when Joe and Charlie were setting up. And he had statistical awareness. He was in a business where when he said this, I thought, what? He's qualified to say this. He said that he did not believe, he believed that 80 to 90% of people in AA do not take step 11 very seriously. Are you kidding me? Now, what I'm trying to push in these things, and certainly in the big book workshops, and it starts with Silkworth, the doctor's opinion. The last line of Silkworth is, I urge every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Now, step 11 says the only thing we're praying for is knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. And page 68 says, just to the extent that I am trying to determine God's will for me, and just to the extent that I'm trying to carry that out, I will get the power, because lack of power is always the dilemma. I will get the power to meet the calamity, whatever calamity is going on at the moment, with serenity. It's an awesome promise. And it's also saying, if I'm not experiencing serenity, which of those two things, not 12 steps, two things, humbly rely on God, behave the way I think God wants me to behave, which it also says on page 69, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. So the real question is, am I doing that? Am I trying to do that? What part is prayer playing in my life? And I hope I didn't, I don't know when we met last, but I heard a really good one I was down in Naples, Florida, and this guy said he's talking to his sponsor about his challenges with step 11. He just doesn't feel like he's doing much of a job with step 11. And the sponsor says, did you go to a meeting today? And the guy goes, yeah, sure. I go to a meeting every day. How did you start the meeting? Well, with a prayer. How did you end the meeting? With a prayer. Did you sit quietly and think about spiritual things? Yeah. Do you believe that God speaks to you through other people? Yeah. Did you hear God speaking to you through other people? Yeah. And it really it struck me, because it is. It's not quite like church, and it's not quite like an intense period of contemplation, but it is an act of prayer. So that was striking. At any rate, St. Ignatius writes these spiritual exercises. After they're over, he writes these rules for discernment. And we have spent, I think this is our 36th meeting on these rules for discernment. We're focused on this book, God's Voice Within, and it's subtitled The Ignatian Way to Discover God's Will. Well, discover God's will for me, is that not step 11, praying only to discover God's will for me and then get the power to carry that out? And I have been saying for a long time, in terms of my personal experience, the battle is between my human will, my human personality that wants certain things and it doesn't want other things, and my spiritual nature, which for me, I call my soul, and where I am pretty clear about what my ego human personality wants. It's identified with my body and my mind, and it wants self-preservation, a sense of safety. It wants self-gratification. It wants to feel good. It doesn't want to feel bad. And it wants self-justification. It wants to justify my selfish, self-centered behavior that accomplishes one of those other things. That's what it wants. And then you get Ignatius coming along and saying, let's see, primary purpose in your life is to trust, love, and serve your creator. And what happens to your human body doesn't matter. Don't forget, this is the Society of Jesus, and they're very focused on his life as a model of the spiritual development. And of course, his life ended in ended in deep dishonor, and ended in real pain and suffering. The process of crucifixion is awful. It's one of the most horrible deaths you could go through, as your body collapses on your lungs and you're strung out and you can't breathe and blah blah blah. And Ignatius is saying, if he could go through that, what are you complaining about? I know I said before that page 68 says we don't apologize for God. And the question is, well, how do I apologize for God? And I apologize for God every time I complain about anything: the weather, how my body feels, the traffic, the stupid government or IRS or corner store, whatever. Whenever my parents, I did a lot of complaining about my parents. Whenever I complain about anything, I'm essentially saying, God, this ain't right. You screwed up here. you didn't do this quite as good as you could have done it. And you remember the idea that one of the challenges of our human experience is we're being told you are not your ego. Bill Wilson, simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. A heavy statement. And I've quoted a dear one around in our area. My life might not look like very much to you, but I'm all I ever think about. You know, she's joking because she's gone beyond that, but she's saying that's what the human mind does. It thinks about itself. And if you raise the question, do you think you created yourself? The human mind's going to say, yeah, because it did. It did. My self-concept that I'm carrying, this legend in my own mind about my own life, yeah, I did create it. I built it brick by brick, stone by stone, since I was a wee little person. And it took me a long damn time to understand I could not trust this thing. You know, step 11 in its depth says, on awakening, as we are considering our plans for the day, we ask God to direct our thinking, and we especially ask that our thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And then goes on to say, under these conditions, you can use your brains with assurance, which means if I'm not asking God to direct my thinking, and I'm not asking that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking, I cannot trust my own thinking. And yet we all do. And we not only trust our own thinking, we don't trust God. You know, we all ascribe whatever our state of existence is, this thing got me here. This thing got me to where I am today. And why I love hearing people say, my best thinking got me here in this room, sitting with a bunch of drunks in the basement of a church, trying to stop drinking or trying to not take the first drink or whatever. Of course, it's so much more than that, because not taking the first drink is the start. But clearing out our minds so we can be more open and receptive to this higher power, that's the work of steps 4 through 9. And finally, cultivating this relationship with higher power of your very own understanding, not the church, not some philosopher, not anybody other than you. What is my sense of this power greater than my mind and my body that has me here for some reason? You know, what I love about the notion of why am I here, notion of primary purpose. We did it when we were reading the book Purpose Driven Life, from which the quote comes, "It's not about you." I just love that. It's not about you. You know, what do you mean it's not about? Of course it's about me. I'm all I've got. What do you mean it's not about me? And then he goes on to talk about he does these five, you know, the subtitle of the book, why on earth, what on earth are you here for? And of course, Ignatius is saying you're here to trust, love, and serve your creator, period. And what happens to your body and your mind is not nearly as important as what's happening to your soul. Rick Warren, Purpose Driven Life, you're here to worship. You're here to proceed in discipleship. You're here to be part of a fellowship. You're here to serve in a ministry, and you're here to be part of a mission, which is carry a message. Worship is prayer and meditation. Fellowship is what we do by trying to be an unorganized organization with our business meetings and our meetings and all the stuff that we do in AA. Discipleship is doing the steps with somebody that's done the steps, can help me do what is very difficult to do. Ministry is where am I going to serve? And mission is what message am I going to carry? Tried to carry a message to other alcoholics, carry this message. And this message is only a relationship with God is going to get me out of the hell that I created, the hell of alcoholism, the hell of whatever life I came from. So discerning God's will for us and the power to carry that out is the ultimate, at least for me, is the ultimate aim of trying to do these steps. And Ignatius's rules for discernment, they're divided into 2 weeks, first week and second week. And then there are, I think, 14 in the first week, and there are 8 in the second week. And they're all about dealing with the human ego, the human mind, and trying to determine, what am I here for? Why on earth am I here? So we left off last time. We're working in this book, and it doesn't matter, you know, if you don't have it, it doesn't matter. If you do have it, that's well, that's the structure that we've been going on to do this. So just to review, where did I put that stuff? Oh, here we go. So a couple of meetings ago, we did chapter 6. And chapter 6 it's the first part of the third part of the book. The first part of the book is just defining desolation and consolation and starting to get us to have an idea of it. And we read the definitions this morning. Consolation, I am in sync with God's purpose for my life. And I know that because I have feelings of faith and hope and love. This changes it. Those are not the feelings that I want in my life. Those are the results of me living my life in accord with God's purpose for my life. Desolation, out of sync with God's purpose for my life. And I know that because I feel doubt and fear and despair. It's been a wonderful thing for me because it's changed the way I've approached it. We pray for serenity. Grant me the serenity. You could say, grant me the ability to know your will for me and give me the power to live to that so that I can experience serenity. That puts it as a result rather than as a goal. So chapter 6 is called Laying a Foundation for Discernment. And number 1 is be clear about what you are seeking. In the Jesuit system, you when you're doing the exam and you're looking at how you're feeling in the moment, or looking at your life, what's right behind you, because the exam is one day at a time. You're not looking back over your life. You're looking over the previous 12 hours and looking forward the coming 12 hours in 15 minutes. They don't want you doing this for hours. This is a brief prayer. But there's a moment in the examen when you're asking God for the power, the grace. Grace is a combination of guidance and actual power to handle whatever situation you're in, to meet the calamity with some form of serenity, or how can I best serve thee? So number one in this chapter 6 is be clear about what you are seeking. Number 2 was establishing a grateful heart, and they had the take and receive prayer, and I read that to you when we had the meeting on that. They do some stories on gratitude. Then they bring forth this Jesuit measure of what we're doing for God's greater glory. Magis, M-A-G-I-S. It's absolutely identical to step 10 saying, how can I best serve thee? It's not how can I serve thee? It's how can I best serve thee? It's not for God's glory, it's for the greater glory of God. It involves us having to discern what's the more important option for me to pursue. It's when you've got positive options as opposed to, or what's the least negative option, I guess, that you could pursue. So what are you seeking? Establishing gratitude for God's greater glory. And then this idea of Ignatian indifference. Now, indifference, I don't think is a good word. Impartiality is a better word for me. That I'm impartial. I don't have, my ego is not invested in some sort of desire. I'm ready to accept whatever. Whatever could be a word for Ignatian indifference. And then they distinguish indifference of the heart and indifference of the will. And they're referring to these two different capacities of a human being. Step 10 says, your next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. That's your job now. You've had some kind of spiritual experience. You know this is not BS, and you're trying to improve this spiritual experience or improve your relationship with God. And that's one of the ways we do it. So indifference of the heart means that it's desire, where indifference of the will is action, it's willingness. So I'm going to my creator and I'm saying, what do you want me to do? That's indifference of the heart. What is your desire for my life? And then the action part is give me the power to do it. And that's where I love it. Honest, open, willing. I'm honest about how badly my life has failed or how miserable I am. I'm open-minded about what to do next. Jackie and I were having a conversation before she said I'm in limbo. And I'm saying we're all in limbo all the time. It's just this thing that's trying to take us out of limbo and explain everything to us and tell us everything about everything so we don't have to feel in limbo. We're all in limbo. None of us know how our lives are going to turn out or what's going to happen next. So anyway, okay, that was chapter 6. Then chapter 7 I'm just reading you the chapter titles so we can get on to what I'm supposed to be talking about today. Chapter 7 was 4 phases of good discernment. And phase 1 was get quiet. First thing you got to do is settle down. In our little thing, it's pause, ask and listen, do. That the pause is step 10. The asking and listening is step 11. The doing is step 12. This is the same idea. First, I got to pause. I got to get quiet. Number 2 was gather the data. Start gathering the information around whatever decision you're trying to make. He very often is talking about whether to be a Jesuit or not, whether to move to another town, whether to enter into a relationship, whether to dissolve a relationship. I mean, it's all these different things. So you're gathering the data. Then chapter 3 is called Dream the Dreams. This is where you're using your imagination like the spiritual exercises do to put yourself in whatever situation you're trying to make a decision about and see what you feel. See what it's all in the head, but it's a way of when you got several alternatives of evaluating these different alternatives in terms of how they make you feel. Do they lead to greater faith, hope, and love, or do they lead you to doubt, fear, and despair? Um, and then in Ponder the Dreams, that's this continuation of the same thing. You're just trying to look at what happened when you were imagining the different alternatives. And then he does spend, there are two other things that they add to this. What about when you're stuck? And also this notion of we call it a God shot, where we experience the power, the majesty, the love of God beyond our ability to doubt with our human brains. Um, I can't say I've experienced it. This whole thing has been so gradual for me. I just know that I have a relationship with God, even though I would tell you well, it's silly to quantify it, but I'm at least 50% in terms of I'm more interested in my relationship with God than I am in my own ego and how it's reacting to my life. And that's a big deal because my ego has been very vocal, very upfront, very in my face about everything that it thinks it wants and needs or doesn't want and doesn't need. So, at any rate, Ignatius does a wonderful thing about the idea of being stuck and what to do when you're feeling stuck, and goes through this is where you bring the rational mind into it. It's very interesting when Ignatius is talking to spiritual directors. If you got a person that is uh, feeling desolation or consolation strongly, um, you don't have a problem. The people you worry about is when they don't feel anything, because it's telling you they're stuck somewhere, and they're probably not feeling anything as a defensive maneuver. This is indifference in its worst sense. It's not what we want. Um, so when a person is stuck, then he gives some advice about um, trying to bring the rational, logical mind, doing pros and cons. Imagine yourself that you're mentoring somebody else who's stuck. What would you tell them to do? It's a wonderful, our book says when you're sponsoring somebody, find out all you can about them so you can put yourself in their place to see how you would like to be approached. This is the same idea. I'm mentoring by trying to understand what would I say to another person that was in this situation. And so it's just ways to deal with that. And he talks about stream of conscious journaling, and any of you that have been to that workshop know we spend some time on how to listen to God. Well, that's a wonderful setup for journaling, for getting yourself quiet. It's the same, establishing the conditions, putting an item in front of your mind, and then just writing down everything that comes through your mind, and then looking at it later on, trying to say, what's my human ego talking and what's the power of God talking? So that's what to do when you're stuck. The other one, the God shot, um, there's a bunch of stuff about that, but we're going to go on to chapter 8. So chapter 8 has 4 big parts to it. Number 1 is called Offering My Tentative Decision. 2 is called Seeking Confirmation. 3 is What to Do If There Is No Confirmation. And 4 is Final Decision and Acting on It. And this is just good stuff. Any of you that are involved in trying to make a decision about what you're doing. This first one, well, I'm just going to read to you from this is the introduction to chapter 8 in God's Voice Within. Ignatius says that after the decision has been made, I am to offer God, our Lord, the decision so that God may accept and confirm it if it is for his greater service, Implications of these few words are strong. After the decision, I offer it to God. So I have said often that I'm not formalistic about this, but I've always had a challenge. The big book says on awakening, um, as we're considering our plans for the day, we ask God to direct our thinking. And I just never felt God direct my thinking. My thinking is too strong-willed. And at any rate, I've never felt God direct my thinking. But I have been able to say, oh, here's what I'm thinking. And could you give me a red light or a green light or a yellow light? Now, this is my way of seeking confirmation. I'm stating my decision in terms of here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. Here's what I'm thinking about saying to so and so. I don't want to go to today's meeting. I'm due to go, but I don't want to go. That's what I'm thinking. Could you give me a red light, a green light, or a yellow light? Well, a red light means don't. Green light means do. And a yellow light means let's keep the conversation going. I don't have a decision for you at this point. And I love that. And especially when you couple it with Emmett Fox saying, he calls it stake your claim. Once you've confirmed that, yes, God does want me to go to the meeting tonight and does want me to stay for the business meeting, I get a green light, then it's, well, then you got to give me the power because I don't want to do it. But I want to be willing to do it if that's what you think I should do. You got to give me the power. Emmett Fox says, stake your claim. This is a wonderful thing if you're ever able to feel it and make it work, because then you are acting in accordance with higher powers' wishes for you, and you will find, at least I find, if I'm clear about my primary purpose and either doing something or not doing something, um, whatever happens is going to be just fine. And I've said often, the primary purpose of a meeting is to stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. Not the primary purpose of the steps. Primary purpose of the steps is to come to a spiritual awakening, develop my relationship with God so I can practice these principles, carry a message and practice these principles. Huge. Is when I'm clear about primary purpose, well, my primary purpose in going to a memorial gathering, is simply to be present. I don't have to change the world. I don't have to change somebody. I'm just supposed to be present. Or I have 4 siblings. There are 5 of us, and we Zoom once a month. And of course, I want to change everybody else. And I want to tell them off, blah, blah. But that's not the purpose of the Zoom. Is just to keep us all connected. And when I realized this is just to keep us all connected, and I don't have to change anybody. I don't have to be any different. It makes all the difference having your primary purpose clear. So the first thing is offering my tentative decision, and he calls it an interior pilgrimage. I thought that was, and he has a number of suggestions in how to do this. One is find some ritual by which to offer this decision to God. I can prayerfully imagine myself kneeling before God's altar. Imagine my kneeling before God's altar. I've got the decision in my hands. I have come to believe this is what you want me to do. Please let me know in one way or another whether or not I am correct, whether or not this is for your greater glory. If this is not your will, please prevent me from moving forward. And then I love this. They call this knock me off my horse. This is St. Paul on wherever he's going. He gets knocked off his horse by the power of God. So this is like what I'm asking for is a red light. Knock me off. Let me know that this is not your will for me. Let's see. So another technique he offers: in my prayer, I imagine myself eliminating all the other options. I think of all the he uses this word pray dream, where you're entering into a prayerful imagination. I put down the other that if I've got three options, I start shutting down option one in order to focus on option three. Say I start shutting down 1 and 2 to focus on 3, and imagine what it would be like. And then you imagine praying, living out the option that you're focused on at the time. So I thought that was pretty good advice when I'm, especially, one of their principles of these rules for discernment is the more important the decision and the more consequential it is, the more time you're going to spend on this. If it's I remember, so I wear a shirt most every day, and they're all lined up in my closet, and I used to open the closet door and look at these shirts and try to think about what color should I wear today, and try to remember what did I wear the other day, so I'm not wearing. Any rate, now it's just God tell me which shirt, and my hand just goes and picks out a shirt, and I put it on, and I'm happy and ready to go. That's inconsequential and not very important. And but I love that I don't have to spend a minute thinking about it. Other things where, especially the more consequential it is, the longer term you're going to spend on this. Okay, so that's it about offering a decision. A second is, I mentioned before, pondering the dreams. And part of that is realistically dealing with the fallout of my choice. And this is where there are always going to be some people that are not going to be happy with the choice that you make. And what you're trying to do is imagine that ahead of time so that it gives you more power to focus on your primary purpose or deal with whatever fallout may be coming your way. One thing is to imagine I've begun to live as if my permanent decision was made. You take yourself through that. You start imagining being in the, and what you're looking for all the time are these signs of, am I able to do this with a modicum of faith and hope and love, or does it bring up doubt and fear and despair? Am I just staying stuck or getting stuck somewhere else? So Ignatius boldly trusts a praying person's deep desires. These are the desires of the heart. Emmett Fox talks about the desires of the heart. We got you'll know from our discussions on the Enneagram, we have the head, the heart, and the gut. And the head is mental stuff, this or that. The heart are feelings, emotions, and the gut is our will to action. The gut is our ability to pursue something, make a decision and pursue something. Well, the desires of the heart is wonderful because it's deeper on some level than just what the mind is telling me I should do or be. And Ignatius says you can trust the deeper desires. Do I sense joyful anticipation, or at least tranquil acceptance, as I consider living with the consequences of this decision? This is Mark Thibodeaux's statement in the book, God's Voice Within. God's confirmation is not the same as others' affirmation. The story of Job comes up a lot in this material. And one of the things about Job is, number one, dude is living a righteous life. He's living a good life, and he has a relationship with God. And then all hell breaks loose. Everything is taken from him. Sickness, pain, all this different stuff. And he's flummoxed because he's got this righteous life. This is one of the oldest books in the Bible. And it's really about desolation and consolation and living in relationship with God. Well, then his friends come by. They've all got complicated names, but they come by and they start trying to explain his pain and suffering to him. But he knows on some level they're not talking the truth. They're talking their own truth, but it's kind of limited. And he learns that he's got to be able to discount. Well, that's what this is talking about. Other people's affirmation may or may not be congruent with my truth about the thing. Um, Another way to seek confirmation is to notice how easily or laboriously doors open. This is always a challenge. I've moved several times in my life. Sometimes the moves have gone easily, or say a new job, or any kind of opportunity. Sometimes it goes easily. Sometimes it goes with great difficulty. I am no longer able to say, when it's difficult, it's a sign that it's not God's will for me. Um, when it goes easily, it may be a sign it's God's will for me. But I love to remember its first week rule number 9, the 3 reasons. And I'll stop at this, and then we'll go on the next time we meet, which will be 2 weeks from now. We won't be meeting next Sunday. The 3 reasons why a loving, caring God would permit me to experience desolation. First reason is, it ain't God's fault, it's my fault. I have let up on my spiritual drill, and my relationship with God is getting weaker because of it. Number 2 is, this is God's way of testing and strengthening me. God wants to see how I will act when I'm not experiencing closeness to God, the love of God, direction from God, whatever. This is testing. We call it, are you willing to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol? Am I willing to do what I think I should be doing, even when it's very difficult? There's even a term called difficult consolation. The third reason is the most important reason. It's the only, when feeling bad about whatever, may be the only way that I get to the conclusion that everything is the gift and the grace of God, for which I cannot assign blame or take credit. And this is a measure of humility. My human mind wants to assign blame somewhere other than itself when it's unhappy. My inner spoiled brat, I like to call it. Assign blame, and when it's feeling good, take credit. I did this. I totally love. Pretty sure it's page 55 in the big book, and we read it. Deep down in every one of us is the fundamental nature of God. The problem is that I have obscured it. I have obscured the fundamental nature of God within me by pomp, by calamity, by worship of other things. I've made other things more important. I'm caught up in self-pity around the calamity. Woe is me. Why is this happening to me? Why does life have to be so difficult? Or pomp. Aren't I something? Wow, don't I have a wonderful life? And I did this. um, so any rate, I love AA. I thank you all for being here. I'm going to gong this gong, and Tom's going to stop the recording, and we'll have some open discussion. Thank you very much for being here, and I will hope to see you in 2 weeks.